I wake up in a new life down by the seaside. If you're watching this video, I assume you've played Disco Elysium. This video is intended to be shown to people who have played Disco Elysium. And if you haven't, please do. It's mostly reading, but it's the most miserably life-affirming reading you'll ever do, probably. And there will be spoilers in this video as well. Part 1. I wake up. Harry is awoken by the infernal engine. He has no memories, only instincts and subconscious reminders of his pain. The pain of his past, of his nostalgia. There are a few theories that the player can choose from towards the end of the game that each point to a different cause of Harry's amnesia. The most basic is that he drank himself until he damaged his brain. He was brain damaged. Another is that it was all psychological, like this weird trauma response to something that happened in his past, specifically to his intense abandonment complex after his girlfriend/wife left. See, Harry is incredibly mentally ill. I think he might have something like akin to bipolar disorder. Dora, his ex, tells him that when he gets sad, he gets way more sad than normal people. And it was emotionally taxing to be with him for her, understandably. She never stopped loving him, but leaving him was all that she could do. Hurt, he got really into drinking and doing drugs. It's all very sad. He is a shadow of a man haunted by a past that he can never return to, so he forgets. They never explicitly state the exact reason he has this strange semantic amnesia, but the big option here, the one I think is probably the canon truth, has to do with my favorite aspect of the game. My favorite quest, my favorite group of characters, and one of the most haunting concepts I've ever seen in fiction. At one point in the game, you encounter a group of young adults, basically kids who want to start a drug lab in an abandoned church using a nightclub as a front. There are a few paths you can go down, but inarguably the best one is to help them build the nightclub after convincing them to abandon the drug lab aspect. This abandoned church, it isn't normal, though. In the center of it is a tiny 2mm hole in the world up in the rafters. That's what they call it. It creates an invisible pillar of silence. It is a point in space that is nothingness. It is less than nothingness. When you step into this pillar, it drowns out all noise. The church was built over 300 years prior to the game's setting, and it was likely built around this hole in the world as a way of religiously containing this indescribable force in a pinewood sarcophagus. But it turns out the best way of containing it is through anotic dance music. The hardcore. The nightclub. The passions and artistry of these down-on-their-luck kids. You see, this hole in the world, it really ties together just about every mystery in the game. It mysteriously wiped a bunch of data that programmers were once using to create a radio-based role-playing game. One of the developers of this game had been studying this 2mm hole in the world. She wants to know what the fuck happened to her shit. It put a lot of people out of jobs. It ruined a potentially great game. Eventually, when Harry comes to understand a lot more about the reality he lives in, he learns about the Pale. A naturally unnatural phenomenon that covers 72% of the world Disco Elysium takes place in. It's what separates the continents that they call Isolas and makes traversal between nations so life-threateningly difficult and rare. You can make calls to people who live on other Isolas because of radio towers set up within the Pale. The Pale's appearance is imperceivable. It is colorless, odorless, and impossible to understand. It's antimatter. It is nothingness solidified. It's the absence of all things, and it is spreading at a slow but seemingly random, unknowable rate. Eventually, it will cover everything. Humanity will end. Entropy is inevitable. That's what entropy means. Fuck. And in order to study the Pale, you have to measure the matter that surrounds it. As you play through the game, as Harry continues with the murder investigation, aspects of his past seep through. When he was younger, he used to want to be an entrepreneur, the people who traverse the Pale, studying it and delivering things through it to other nations. He's passionate about it, and that passion is something you can't really refuse, unless you, as a player, ignore the Pale altogether and just play it straightforward without exploring. If you're a fucking bad gamer, if you're a bad gamer, go to gamer timeout, go to the corner, go to the gamer corner, go to timeout, go to the game. So he theorizes that the 2mm hole in the world is one of multiple scattered across Elysium. They are the origin points of the Pale. The Pale is birthed from these tiny holes around the world. It's all very disco, I know. Harry arrives in Martinez and he enters a church that he likely has been to prior to the game. He goes to the all too familiar Pillar of Nothingness, climbs up in the rafters, finds the hole, sticks his drunken, high, mentally fucked up head in, and becomes nothing himself. This theory is supported by the crabman Tiago, who lives up there, and his memory is pretty much gone as well. There's also the motorway south, a point so far deep into the Pale when you start to forget everything.
Motorway south. The lone vector stretches in your mind's eye into the wild Pale yonder, for an unimaginable distance, forgetting, until you can no longer remember anything. No cities, no mountains, no oceans, and finally, no vector. Nothing remains. A blank space with no point of reference, where only one type of motion is possible. The motion of a human throat, swallow in, and then it comes to you. To reach the end of the motorway south is to be unborn. You've had this thought before, while aimlessly wandering the streets of Jamrock. A lost piece of the man you were. A dark hope.
Except the Pale isn't just nothingness. I left out a piece of the truth before when I said that. The Pale is a manifestation of nostalgia, the past, regrets, heartbreaks. The people who enter the Pale and stay there too long become over-radiated and begin to live lives that aren't their own. Lives of memories of other people. Humanity's relationship with itself, with its past, it forms a void that grows larger and larger. In the Pale and the pain and the past we work. In many ways, Harry's a personification of the Pale and its will. As an existence, Harry's heartbreak and his pain never goes away. All he did was drown himself in the nothingness that spawned everything. The point of origin for the unexplainable force of the past itself. There are many times in my fucked up head that I wish I was a different person. I wish I could clean out the rooms and wake up in a new life. Ship-shape and shoe-shine. But that's impossible. Even for Harry. Because he woke up and he stared right into the face of Dora. The X-something. The innocence of humanism. The stained glass work of beauty. Much of its surface area cracked by being littered with bullets from a long ago firefight that he was likely involved with. I don't think it's necessary to explain the significance of that imagery, so, figure that one out yourself. You can do that, I'm sure. Later in the game, Harry encounters the Insulindian Phasmid. It's a cryptid, and he has a vision that it's some sort of prophet. He asks it, where does this come from? All of this, around us, the world. To which the Phasmid responds,
Not even the birds know that. Not even the water lily.
Then I chose for Harry to say, then all we can do is beat our fists against it, day after day, with no answer.
You can also eat it. If it's a leaf, you can put it in your mouth. Yum yum. Or read.
But once the light is on in the universe, it will never go out. Egghead said that one. I like that one. I like it. Makes me feel good. In the face of just pure existential terror, the light in the universe will never go out. Even if it will. Even if it probably will. It probably will.
What if you didn't lose your memory? What if something in Martinez came and stored it all away, for you to slowly open one box at a time, so you can choose which parts to keep? Keep almost none of it. Only the flowers on the windowsill. Only the distant sound of a radio. Lose all the actors, the dark shadows. Leave only the still lifes, the blissful distant wash of waves. If everybody knew, you never did. She'll be coming soon. That is all.
So, this origin point of the Pale that connects to what they call the motorway south, that's what causes Harry to lose his memory. It's a pretty straightforward analysis and theory that's more or less proven by the game. But as you can see, there's a lot left in this video. I'm a fucking professional. Another option you can choose to explain Harry's amnesia has to do with the socioeconomic issues plaguing his mind. His subjective ideas of capitalism determined by the player, and the actual objective real-world effects it has on people.
What? He lost his memory because of capitalism?
Part 2. In a New Life. Martinez is a small town, a subsection of Revachol, Insulin's largest city. 50 years ago, there was a revolution. 50 years ago, communists fought, and after taking control of the city, were ultimately quickly annihilated by the fascist death squads of the moralist government. The symbols of boy-child freedom and girl-child revolution are symbols of purity and hope, representing the sincere motivation of communism. Like the real world, there are still believers in communism after the revolution. Those who are intellectually invested in political theory, or those who have become so disillusioned by capitalism that they turn to something else. There is an infernal buzzing. I am disabled and poor. The buzzing is loud, or it feels loud. At the same time, it feels like it's surrounding me. It also feels like it is internal, psychological. That's the sound of capital. The thoughts that I just can't keep out no matter what. Capitalism caused my mental illness. If there were such a thing as the Pale in real life, as horrifying as that would be, what would I want to do to myself with it? Harry is suicidal. Fail a check and you can end up sticking a gun barrel in your mouth. Characters reference it happening before the amnesia. He was probably often suicidal before his big breakup. He is a sad, sad man living in a sad, sad world, a post-revolution capitalist hellscape that he polices because he wants to be more than just a sad man, more than just a gym teacher with ambitions of being a poet or a deep, pale explorer. I'll tell you what I would love to do is solve grotesque murders and put together crime scenes and take down bad guys, but man, that is not real, unfortunately. That's not... Damn it! I want to be a cool detective. I want to be a cool, sad, fucked up detective. I want to look at dead bodies and have a thing with the yarn, you know? I want to do that. I can't do that. The victim of the murder that is central to Disco Elysium's plot was a fascist and likely a rapist. And by all accounts, he deserved to be killed. The murderer is a deserter, a holdout from the old revolution, a communist, one of, if not the last communist soldiers from the war left in Revachol. He too is suffering from amnesia, a strange dementia caused by a strange natural phenomenon. He too thinks that what he is doing is justice. He too is distraught by the promise of loving a woman he can't. hardcore to the mega, internally coherent. This is why the idea of Harry being a communist fits the folding mechanism so well. It further thematically ties him to the killer.
And then you see it, as it strangles and beats your friends to death. The sweetest, most courageous people in the world. You see the fear and power in its eyes. Then you know that the bourgeois are not human.
A haunting line. I'll never forget the way it's delivered with such spite and malice. Alright, so this is sort of an abrupt interlude, and it's not scripted, but I couldn't shake the feeling while editing that I was missing some big piece of the folding mechanism that more so relates to real-world communist philosophy and policing. So I should start with saying that as humans, we have, in my opinion, an inherent moral philosophy on everything that is ethical and moral and cannot be shaken. And we all really, I think, want to do the right thing. Except capitalism incentivizes not doing the right thing. And doing the right thing should realistically be everyone's primary motivation in life. But, let's talk about Karl Marx for a second. He argued that to achieve anything in altering society, it should require one to abandon moral judgments. And I don't think this is possible, and I think Karl Marx definitely took moral stances because, in my opinion, it's impossible not to. But one could argue that his absolute rejection of morality is a moral stance in and of itself. Even this materialist philosophy requires faith in humanity's own morality, even if that is irrational. I don't think he would like to hear that, and I don't think he would agree with me, and I think that's sort of a hypocrisy that the video game Disco Elysium explores with the killer. So anyone can do the right thing, and Marxist morality says that to do the right thing, we must abandon the concept of what is right and what is wrong. Humanity's ability to do that is corrupted by the ethical prejudices of the bourgeois and stuff like that, whatever. But this killer clearly is very loyal to his moral philosophy, yet he does not adhere to it. He does not adhere to the basic foundations of communism because he is so tied up in his own personal revenge and lust and he can't ignore that, and Harry can't either, and none of us can. The subjectivity and malleability of morality is incapable of being abandoned, in my opinion, but it's not incapable of being understood. And I think this game knows that, and it explores that in the hypocrisies of this guy. So I do think that the game is saying that you can't really ignore moralism or moralist philosophy in general. And the innocence of humanism, Dolores Day sort of inventing this, it's kind of beautiful. Like, I think humanism and materialism as in focusing on the rational, material, real world, I think these two things can and should go together, hand in hand. And I think often in society we miss that. We don't understand that we can be humanistic and pursue moral truths while also rationally focusing on what we have and how to improve it, and how conflict and revolutions play into changing things. I don't know. This was unscripted, and it's an interlude, and I'm just saying things right now, but I hope they're valuable because I really do think this makes the video better. So anyway, back to silly old me, goofy old me. Look at me there. Bye. In a sea of media with superficially leftist theses, I am drawn to Disco Elysium and its ability to tell the stories of a wide variety of people suffering directly from capitalism. The union workers on strike, the communist theorists who meet up at night to discuss political theory, the struggling small business owners, the victims of patriarchal violence, the children addicted to drugs, even the rich character, the capitalist, is given empathy and understanding for her economic situation. The game understands how class is intrinsic to identity and is refreshing. on a rhetorical and intellectual level to see something dive into the faults of right-wing and left-wing ideologies and how these things operate under a capitalist system. It has such a love and understanding for all of humanity. I mean, just watch this conversation. From the Communism Vision Quest, Harry joins a leftist reading group dedicated to reading communist political theory. And if you pass a check, you get one opportunity to ask the big question about communism. The question you mean to ask is both very complicated and incredibly simple. Just watch this.
The young man waits patiently for you to finish.
Yes?
The young man considers your words for a minute. You're witnessing his ironic armor melt before you. This is his true self you're seeing now. There's something going on in there, but his innermost sanctum is still beyond your reach.
The theorists Buncher and Watman, not infra-materialists, but theorists nonetheless, say that communism is a secular version of Pericanasian theology, that it replaces faith in the divine with faith in humanity's future. I have to say, I've never entirely understood what they mean, but I think maybe the answer is in there, somewhere. Only in this very specific sense. Communism doesn't dangle any promises of eternal bliss or reward. The only promise it offers is that the future can be better than the past, if we're willing to work and fight and die for it. Nobody said fulfilling the proletariat's historic role would be easy. It demands great faith with no promise of tangible reward. But that doesn't mean we can simply give up. Even then,
Mazov says it's the arrogance of capital that will be its ultimate undoing. It does not believe it can fail, which is why it must fail.
Their faces blurred, yet frozen as though in ambrotype. You were never that young, were you?
I guess you could say we believe it because it's impossible. It's our way of saying we refuse to accept that the world has to remain. Like this. Yes, that's a good way to think of it. A work in progress.
And I read the entire communist theory book that the game gives you. It's fucking weird. This game's version of Marx and Engels communicated telepathically, and the strength and will of communism can hold up structurally unstable buildings. It's all very, grasping for conceptual. It's also moving as fuck. I mean, that last quote, the one about the world remaining like that, God, that gets me. That gets me. It hits hard because communism is kind of dumb. I don't consider myself an expert on political theory by any means. That infernal capitalist buzzing still tortures me, and I haven't felt this way in like ever. Fucking fight in a revolution, man. Fucking like eat the rich, stuff them in a sausage grinder and eat them and redistribute the wealth because Jesus Christ, look around. The infernal buzzing stops for one moment, and I have hope in humanity's future, a practically divine faith in the nature of freedom and revolution. And you look around in the present, the working class human force of will, the strength of its spirit is already fighting to survive and even thrive under a system that seeks to actively destroy that will and mold it into slaves for the rich. It's fucked. It's evil. And I know this is kind of a liberal mindset, so shut the fuck up. But god damn it, it inspires me to see people drinking and singing and feeling love, because I think maybe it makes way less sense than what I've been doing. Cowering in fear of poverty and in fear of the idea that capital, to me, has no mask. I am the infernal engine, and I will never stop, and I will get worse and worse and better, and I will care, and I will regret caring, and the people who built this world intended for it to be better for me, but they failed. It's easier to live in their failure with this game by my side, as cheesy as that sounds. And this is what I'm doing now. It's a weapon against the buzzing, the killing, the things that people who have it worse than I do have to face. This is getting vague. This is getting conceptual. Consciousness is new to the universe. We all have our ways of dealing with the shock. The miracle is humanity. The miracle is rain-soaked streets and after-hours book discussions, and the fact that in the face of capitalism and fucking climate change, we all find things to love and hold on to. I said it was getting vague and conceptual, then I said that shit. That just came out of me.
Homosexual underground.
The communards of the old revolution were naive to think that they could succeed in making humanity better. They had the revolutionary fervor, but they lacked the understanding that when the mask of capital falls, mercy is lost in the pale. The communist theorists who run the book club aren't even revolutionaries. Their ideas might be, but they aren't. Even if they were, even if the time of revolution did come, communist cop Harry would likely be given the job to quell it. After the tribunal, the cinematic fight where people die and Harry and his partner Kim have to attempt to minimize the damages, Cindy, a hardcore cigarette-smoking criminal and an artist, finally finds the words for her graffito. One day, I will return to your side. Part 3, Down by the Seaside. Brother, you already were a ghost. Up there screaming along with all of them. Scaring each other. Haunting each other. It's the living who are ghosts. The dead are silent. They don't rattle windows or write letters in blood. The living do. Leave them behind. Rest. I live in a relatively large city in northern Illinois. It rains a lot and it snows a lot, but unfortunately it's really far from the sea. I've lived here basically my whole life. I know where the roads lead, downtown and uptown, east and west. There are parts of this town that are pornographically poor. The reason I think that I can connect with Disco Elysium so much is because it gets it. The pale is the negation of being. Off we go into the wild pale yonder, one and all. The pale is death for the universe. Harry wants to die, but dying isn't really disco enough. So he forgets. The Shivers skill in particular is one of the most valuable and accurate depictions of becoming one with a city that is implanted in your memory. Like every gust of wind that can open up different feelings of deja vu, and every raindrop in the same puddle that you're sure you've stepped in before on countless different sidewalks. Sometimes I swear I can hear it speak to me. It tells me that I am the reason for its existence, a violent and irrepressible miracle, that I am the one who represents humanity, and I could destroy it and rebuild it and destroy it again on accident. I could die and be reborn, but the past, the past will never go away. However hard I try, however hard you try, the end of the world won't come just because you want it to. In the face of the achingly slow process of the end of the world, at least humanity's world, consciousness' world, we can do nothing but focus on each other and do what's right. Make excellent art. Build communism. Get over your ex something. Turn from the ruin and go forward. Do it for the working class. I know this wasn't really a review or a focused analysis, even. My cat wants in. It's more of just a love letter, sort of a piece of art itself, an essay dedicated to my favorite video game. One of the funniest, most heartbreaking, and gorgeously written video games. And it's really hard to boil it down to just being anti-capitalism, but I do think that's reductive, because it has so much of an immense soulful love for humanity as a whole, as much as it does hate. The people that get by in capitalism and the people that have the will to fight it both receive empathy. At the same time, it is unflinchingly, brutally honest about the world. The Furies are at home in the mirror. and it holds that mirror up to show you in excruciating detail your hypocrisies, biases, and political shortcomings. Marxism is a fucking tragicomedy, after all. In the pale of Her Majesty, the lost we were. The pain of her beautiful face we infer. That the end is only the beginning of the end of her. In the pale of the emptiness that sounds, we go on. In the pain of the blood and the tears, it's foregone. The conclusion is nothing more than a song. A song of forgiveness and a small word of hope that the miracle is coming and with it labored cargo. But in the pale, in the pain, in the end, nothing else matters. And the unfortunate horror of the lost child's heart, in the mirror of the ballad of the maker's work of art, in the sweat and the cold of the labor's endless scars.